good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and thank you for joining this podcast. Today I have Elaine Godley from the Perfect Hub Club, and she's going to give us a rundown on what her business is all about, the journey that she's taken from starting up, the challenges she's overcome, and give you some good advice as an entrepreneur business person. As the podcast is called Game Changer, we are going to try and bring out of Elaine various different ways of changing your game, the sort of mindset and actions she's taken to change her own game and take you on a different journey. Because those of us who are in business know that it can be extremely challenging at times, and it does help to have people give you various different insights. So, Elaine, thank you for joining and welcome. The floor is yours. Tell us all about your business, where you started, challenges, and where you are today.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for the opportunity to speak with you today. It's unusual for me to be on the other side because I host a podcast as well, so it's interesting when I'm called upon to speak. So I run the Perfect Health Hub, which is an online repository for health and well-being. It's a free resource for people. There is a paid membership side, and we do health networking. We have a drop in health surgery, and we have guest speakers on another day of the week. But I didn't start doing that. I started my first business back in the 1970s with my second husband, and we had a kitchen design and installation business. We had 4 showrooms in and around London. We did all Harrods work. I can walk along the River Thames and show you the penthouses and Dockland warehouses that we helped to convert and put kitchens in, and I was project managing. I didn't know it was called project management in those days. To me, it was just common sense. But that was many, many years ago. So I've reinvented myself lots of times over the years. And the advice I would give to anybody listening or watching this podcast is to be aware of who you are and stand in your own power, because so many distractions are out there these days to take us down different rabbit holes and so on. And there's guidance, do this, oh no, don't do that, do this, and oh, do this, but do it in a different way. I mean, it goes on and on and on. No wonder people are confused, and mental health is, as bad as it's ever been. But when you understand yourself, what your own behaviour characteristics are, what your own behaviour strengths are, you can then manage yourself far better and not put yourself in situations where you're working against yourself, you're fighting with yourself. And the way I do that, 30 plus something years ago, I got trained in behavioural profiling. So I use that in my health hub. So I can tell by looking at somebody's behaviour pattern, the likelihood of them being ill, what they're likely to be ill with, how to manage the relationship with them, because my profile obviously is not the same as everybody else's. We've all got unique parts to us. So the more we understand ourselves and the differences with other people, the better we can manage that relationship. So whether you're dealing with suppliers, clients, customers, whatever you call them, whether you're dealing with mentors, that's another thing I would definitely suggest people do, is get a mentor. When I first started, 1979, I think it was 78, 79, there were no such things as mentors. Accountants counted beans backwards. Many of them still do, but they're waking up now. Bank managers, just used to smoke in their offices, and you'd get thousands borrowed just on a nod and a bottle of whiskey type of thing. It's so different today.
Yeah, things have come a long way. You started in 1979. I was 7 years old at that time, and things have changed a lot since then. A key point you mentioned there, Elaine, was understanding your own strengths and your own weaknesses, knowing your own personality, and then using that to your benefit in terms of being a business. What kind of challenges do you think there are with that? Is it something, some behaviors are so I put it this way. I know that some of our beliefs are not really our beliefs because they are things we've learned from our parents, learned from, various different influential people in our lives. What's your view on that? Does that count as knowing yourself, or do you need to get past that?
There's a whole load of things. In my view, knowing who you are is 80% of the challenge of life. So when I first got trained, I started volunteering in schools and I was mentoring head teachers. I was helping senior management teams to understand each other in schools. And then one day, one of the head teachers came to me and she said, I love this stuff about profiling. So I use the DISC model, DISC. And if you Google DISC, it's one of the most commonly used profile systems in the world. It's been around many, many years. And it goes back to the days of Hippocrates, who was the father of medicine.
Yeah.
And he identified what he then called the four humours. And he identified that people who have different personality traits will have different illnesses.
Yeah.
So I've now kind of squared the circle. And in the work that I do these days, I use the behavioural profiling tool to identify health and well-being. I can tell people who are at risk of burnout if they've already reached burnout level. And I'm a qualified nutritionist these days, and I've had 4 different versions of cancer, and I also beat a kidney disease. I was told I was incurable, and I couldn't have done any of that had it not been for my own personality style, which got me into trouble, but also used to get me out of trouble. So when you know how your behaviour can get you into hot water and how to use those strengths to get you out, that's a huge thing. And I don't believe we have weaknesses. We all have limitations. We have, positive stuff, loads of positive stuff, but we have limitations. So it's recognizing as much what you're not so good at and not necessarily training yourself to be better at that. It's not necessary, we recognize the value of working in teams. And I'm hopeless at I'm hopeless. I don't enjoy, so therefore I'm not good at anything to do with detail and process and procedure. But working in a team with people who've got those characteristics and love that type of work, bingo, we've got a fantastic team.
I think that's an absolutely brilliant point there, because that it is all about teamwork, and that seems to be a common theme with everyone that I have on the podcast, and it's a theme that I've learned in my life. Now, you've mentioned some challenges there, Elaine, and how how knowing yourself and your personality, knowing how it got you into trouble in the first place, and what you did to get out of it. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so from the kitchen business days, we did very, very well, very successful, fancy sports cars, nice house, all the fancy holidays and everything. Money was coming in left, right, and centre, but we had no way of accounting. We had no systems, no processes. So I really learnt the hard way of how to run a business. In 1986, we went into liquidation, and my husband of the day was an alcoholic, which I didn't realise at the time. I thought entertaining and business socialising at the level we were doing was normal. It wasn't. It was way over the top. Anyway, again, another lesson. So I went into London. I got myself some interviews, and I ended up working with a firm of accountants, and noticed very quickly that they had the same challenge that we were suffering from, which was cash flow. In the days of the early 80s, if a contractor had a door handle missing, they might hold back £10,000. So cash flow was a real issue, and because we didn't have any proper systems and processes, we fell foul. There was also marketing issues. We were selling top of the range kitchens at 25,000-30,000 back in those days, and then gradually what we call the sheds, the flat pack furniture started coming into being. So we made every mistake going, but we had a very good run for a good few years. And so I went into London, got myself an interview. I ended up over the years being headhunted, and I ended up being vice chair of a national what do they call it? The Institute of Legal Cashiers and Administrators. So I went from accounting firms to law firms, and I ended up being managing partner of various different law firms as well. And then after that, I came out of corporate in 1998. I did a master's degree in that time as well. I believe I'm the youngest person to have qualified at the age of 40 with an MBA in legal practice from Nottingham Law School, and I've done a lot of project management, turnaround, transformational change using this behavioural profiling. over the years, and the knowledge I have of running businesses, mistakes I've made, etc., etc. So it's been an interesting journey. So I've kind of gone into different sections, different chapters of life, and ended up kind of reinventing myself each time, but building on the experience that I had already.
Hello everyone, this is Mark Sauls from offstel3000.com, and I'm here to tell you something that I know you're going to find of interest. There are 73 different ways to grow your business, and to find out what they are, all you have to do is book a 30-minute free consultation with me. That's right, free, to get 73 different ways to grow your business that you can walk away with at the end of the meeting if you choose to work with somebody else, or you can work with me and my specialist team to make it happen. Now, back to the podcast. And you mentioned the key thing there, that you are, you've got your own podcast, and it's a bit different being on the other side, and it is, because I did quite a few, and when I found myself as a guest on someone else's podcast, it was the strangest thing. It took me a few minutes to adjust to that. You've done quite a lot of transitions there, Elaine, from various different things, from your kitchen business into accounting and law and stuff like that. How challenging did you find that?
I've never found anything a challenge as such, because I've enjoyed everything I do, and that's another piece of advice, guidance, whatever, suggestion that I'd like to pass on, because when you enjoy what you do, it's not work. I don't think I've ever done a day's work in my life, because I've always enjoyed what I do. But again, that can get us into trouble. So when I came out of corporate in 1998, I then set myself up as a business consultant, and I've done lots of different projects. However, because I enjoy what I do, and still do to this day, although I've transitioned more into health and well-being linked with behaviour, I've found that I was working till 2-3 o'clock in the morning, getting up at 6 o'clock, doing it all again for clients. And I was kidding myself. I was having so much fun. I just didn't want to stop. Sleep was an inconvenience, but unless we sleep, we end up with our health suffering. So a build up of over the years. That's why I ended up with my cancer. I was given less than a year to live in 2015 with stage 4 cancer. I'd had 2 previous breast cancers. I clearly wasn't listening to my body, and that's another suggestion that I'd make to anybody. Doesn't matter who they are, particularly men. Men are notoriously bad about waiting until things are really serious to deal with health matters. So it's I've done loads more reinventions between being a business consultant and the health that I do now. But everything is just so fun. I love my life. It's brilliant. Absolutely love it.
Before I forget, you've mentioned so many things there. One of them is, you mentioned about the behavior profiling. It's something that I've had an interest in. I've always been interested in human psychology, probably just trying to understand why my own head ticks the way it does. So from the various different types of personalities, and behavioral profiling that you've done, if there is an answer to this, which would you say is the personality or the behavior that A, brings the most stress or illness, or B, brings the most success and happiness?
So using the DISC profiling style, DISC, D is direct, I is inspiring, S is supportive, and C is conscientious. Now they are my words, high level words. If you to Google, you will get different words. You'll get dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance, which are more boring words, but they're the traditional words. So each of those have got characteristics, and each of them will bring health challenges. Typically, the high S person, the person who's got more people-pleasing attributes, shall we say, looking after everybody else but themselves, carers, accountants, solicitors, people in the professions are typically going into a profession to help people, but they don't help themselves. So out of all the clients, I've seen lots and lots of clients in health. I used to run a health clinic as well. I used to run a cardiovascular health clinic. Of the people that used to come to see me, typically they were those type of kind of gentler type of people.
Yeah.
And there's a saying that only the good die young, and that's kind of it really. But with the other personalities, so the high D, the high I, so the high inspiring, chatty, happy-go-lucky, impulsive people who are also direct and driven to achieve, which is those two are my blend, whereas accountants and lawyers are typically S and Cs. There are a blend, so you can't have a bad profile. You have what you have, and I've actually created my own model now, so I call it DISC Plus, and my website is discplus.health, and that forges together the DISC behavioural profiling, the health aspects, and I can identify in a team, for example, the people who are likely to be suffering, even though they may not be saying anything, that I can identify health challenges by looking at somebody's profile pattern.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting stuff, behavioral profiling, and it's probably something I'm gonna study a bit more when I get 5 minutes free. I'm still, I when it comes to personality types and things like that, I alternate between INTJ and ENTJ. It just depends on what's happening. Sometimes I'm quite extroverted, and other times I'm quite introverted. But I think being an introvert is my natural disposition. What would you say yours is, Elaine?
Outgoing, chatty. I used to host a radio show when I was in the UK, and I've done over 500 interviews now on with the radio and the podcast. So I'm somebody who you can't shut up, basically. I've got an opinion on all sorts of things, but I've learned over the last 4 years of nonsense that we've been through in the world that not everybody wants to hear my opinion. So I've learned to rein myself in a bit more, and I'm training myself to be a bit more kinder, shall we say, than the wording that I use, because I tend to come out with direct stuff. That's who I am. That's how I'm made. I was very sporty, competitive. Now I'm not competitive. I do things to the best of my ability and have a laugh at the same time. I play various different sports, but I do it for the enjoyment and the socialising rather than the old Elaine years gone by would have been doing it to win. So we learn as we age, don't we?
Yeah, you mentioned doing what you enjoy. Because so goes the old saying, "Do what you enjoy, and you'll never work a day in your life." Now, I come from a background where I only discovered this a few weeks ago when I was listening to Dan Priestley, and he was talking about how the old economy was based on uh, a demand for specific skills. So you went into school, and they pumped out people with various different skills, so you could go into industry and satisfy the demand there. And how things have changed now. So I am, by trade an aircraft engineer, which I started off doing that. I didn't do it because I had a great love for aircrafts or anything like that. I did it because there was an opportunity to earn a good salary, have a profession behind me, and have something to fall back on, because we were always taught to have a backup for things. Um, so there's a bit of a conflict there, for people like me and some people who come from that same background, where you teach yourself and your children to satisfy a demand, to learn a trade, go to university, do something, get a degree, so you can go and fill a gap in the market somewhere and earn money. While that might not be the best enjoyable experience for you, there probably isn't a balance for this. But have you always been about doing something you enjoy, or were you once part of that brigade that filled a gap?
I never had any career guidance. I couldn't stand school. I was on the sports field, in the swimming pool. I represented my county at various different sports and swimming at national level. So I was not interested in school in the slightest. I got very bored very quickly. I used to lark around. I used to bunk off. And I used to go to the local cemetery and wander around there because nobody would find me there. Um, I thought that I might end up in the police. My father was a police inspector, but sadly he died at the age of 46 when I was 19. So I think that was a big influencing factor in my life. Live for today. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. and it was a very difficult time, obviously, for the family. But we get on with things, don't we? Life happens. Nasty stuff happens to all of us, but it's how you deal with the adversities. It's not what happens; it's how you deal with it that counts. And again, knowing the personality profile. So that's why when I first got trained, as I mentioned, I started helping schools and head teachers and senior management teams, because if I'd had that kind of guidance, if I knew who I was, instead of being told, oh, if only you focus, if only you'd sit still, very possibly, if I could be bothered, that I may have a diagnosis of something. My family don't agree with my lifestyle. I'm very interested in so many different things, and I don't sit still. So that's who I am. I recognise that. So I don't put myself in situations where I'm going to be sitting at a computer all day. Sometimes it's necessary, but recognising what your strengths are, what your limitations are, as I mentioned before, really, really important.
Yeah. What really did get my attention there was about understanding your strengths, also knowing what your weaknesses are, and not necessarily doing something to fix them, because that's generally what most people are taught. It's something that I grew up learning is understand your weaknesses and then turn them into strengths, so that you've got strength everywhere, which probably isn't the best thing to do, because the stronger you are at everything and too many things, the more work you give yourself and the more stress you have. Whereas you could have other people that are, better suited to certain roles to complement your weaknesses, rather than you try and do it all yourself. So, if I had to come to you, being an engineer, a business owner who works 12 to 16 hours a day on most days, 6 days or 7 days a week, I probably have a very good idea of what you're going to tell me, because I've told myself that 1,000 times, and so many other people have told me that as well. So, what would, you come across as a kind of mentoring, coaching kind of person. And if I dare say, someone that looks like they don't take any nonsense. What would you, what would you say?
I would tell you to stop. I would tell you to take up a hobby. I would tell you to keep a food diary. So food, drink, and anything you put in or on your body, keep that diary for 5 to 7 days, and then review it with somebody who knows what they're talking about in terms of nutrition and lifestyle. So a lifestyle coach. I've got a system on my back end of my website, which I can do a review with people, and I can do that for free. So help is out there. When you review what you're eating, drinking, and putting on your body, and looking at your overall lifestyle, which the questionnaire that I have offers, you are amazed at how you're doing yourself a disservice. Most people don't sleep enough. When we're sleeping, our body is healing. And unless we're getting enough sleep, which is why I ended up with so many different forms of cancer, including stage 4, because I wasn't listening to my body. So listen to your body. And when you're listening to your body, when you're observing what's happening, so many people are in trouble as people get sort of 45 upwards, they start to get aches and pains. Invariably, it's because of the way it's their lifestyle, but very often what they're eating. They're not doing enough movement. They're not sleeping well enough. This kind of thing. None of this is rocket science, and it's all in our own hands. We have a responsibility to look after ourselves. We cannot press the button. And as you said, I don't take nonsense. And on the website, I actually say to people, don't bother coming to me for guidance if you're not prepared to put the work in. What is the point? You're wasting your time and money and my time. I've got better things to be doing. I play pickleball, badminton, and I've got 2 rescue dogs now, and I've got a very busy social life. So I'd sooner be out socialising than wasting time on somebody that can't be bothered to put the work in. So there we are.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening and joining this podcast. My name is Mark Sauls from Offstel 3000, and I have produced a course that will change your leadership journey and take you towards success in a much more holistic way. My course gives you practical applications of the different leadership principles and also gives you an experience of journaling your journey so that you can reflect upon it and make adjustments as you go along. There are many millions of leadership courses out there. Mine is based on the successes of very successful leaders and also the hardships that they came across. It also documents my own leadership experience, my journey from the shop floor into a senior leadership position, the mistakes I made, the learnings that I took from those mistakes, and the superpowers that I developed from them. I say superpowers because they're really simple, but they are absolutely life-changing in terms of your leadership journey. So I do encourage you to take the course, complete it, and get your certification at the end of it. Now, I'm also the author of 2 books, So Many Ways to Get What You Want and The Traits of Successful Leaders. These 2 books not only give you the tools for becoming a successful leader, but they also go into great depth in terms of influence and persuasion, which is a much overlooked tool in the leadership realm. Now, thank you for listening. Please do take the opportunity to read the books and do the course. Now let's get back to the podcast. Yeah, I agree with that. I have some mentees in various different things, leadership coaching and things like that, and it's I'm always amazed at how sometimes people expect you to have a magic wand that's just going to fix everything without following all the guidance or instructions, especially when it comes from, it's different, I think, if you're listening to guidance from someone that's read it out of a book or learnt it in some course or something like that, and they're just passing that knowledge on. But if you're learning it from someone that's had a deep experience in it, and, their guidance is worth its weight in gold, it just doesn't make any sense to take on that guidance and then cherry pick what you want and what you don't want to do. So, there's people like, who would you say, before I ask you the next question, who would you say is someone that you take guidance from apart from your own experiences? I'll give you an example. You've got people like Dan Priestley, you've got Joe Dispenza, you've got Dan Pena, who's not everybody's cup of tea, and you've got all these different kinds of people. Have you got any particular people that you model yourself on?
I won't say I model myself on anybody. I am me. I'm unique. Thank goodness we don't want the world full of people like me. We'd never get anything. We'd get too much done and not enough systems and processes in place. But all of the people you mentioned, yes, they're fabulous people. I had the privilege of being personally trained in the 90s by Bob Proctor, who sadly died a couple of years ago, and he kind of grandfathered Tony Robbins. And yeah. I've trained with him, and I still teach some of his work. And he took his work from Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, which is one of the iconic business books that everybody should be reading. So I used to teach in schools the principles of Think and Grow Rich. And on my podcast, so on displus.health, there's a guest interview tab. Somewhere in there, if you do a search, there's an interview with not an interview, a masterclass I did looking at Napoleon Hill's work and how that relates to health and well-being as well as business. Yeah. So there's so many books out there that we can draw from. There's so many podcasts now. We've got the internet and YouTube and so on and so forth. But as you say, you cannot read a book on something and then expect to implement it. You can't read a book on swimming and expect to be a good swimmer. You've got to dive in the water. And unless people do everything kind of hand in hand. I talk about balance. I'm a health mentor these days, and I love red wine. Living in Portugal, I mean, it's obligatory, really. And so I have a glass of red wine, and I have a glass of water. So balance in everything. Yeah. That's it's an aspect that we struggle to find sometimes, because you will get some well-known personalities like Stephen Bartlett that every so often there'll be a post on LinkedIn or Twitter or somewhere that says that there's no such thing as balance, and it just depends on where you find your greatest joy. Do you find your greatest joy working hard and staying up until stupid o'clock in the morning like Steve Jobs used to do? Steve Jobs slept in his office most of the time, didn't really have time to do anything else, devoted most of his life to his business. Dan Pena also says the same thing. You've got to he slept in his office as well. He's taken some, he's got a very hard way of doing things. And, he seems to be happy with what he's doing.
how would you argue that point about there's no such thing as balance? Because I think you are obviously an advocate of balance.
Yeah, I'm very much in balance. I'm always banging on about balance, but it's different for different people. Um, I've worked hard, play hard all my life, but I don't consider the work bit. It's just a different form of fun for me.
Yeah,
Challenges, yes, and I love a challenge. If somebody tells me not to do something, so when I was told I would die within a year if I didn't do what the doctors told me, you can imagine the
yeah,
expletive words I used. Which wasn't very ladylike. But in 4 months I beat stage 4 cancer. So go figure. My balance is my balance. Your balance is your balance. Everybody has a different version of balance, and
yeah,
it's no damn business of anybody else's what our balance is, and it's not for us to judge what people should or shouldn't be doing. All we can do is share our experience, share our guidance, our mistakes, our good things, and it's up to people to take responsibility for themselves. We cannot fix people. They have to fix themselves, but we can help them, we can guide them.
yeah. So if someone came to you to your business for help in a certain area, is it like a framework of step 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we have to follow, or is it something that's tailor made for each person? How does it work?
I've got four key areas. So I look at behavioural profiling, so the DISC Plus health assessment. I do a metabolic assessment, which is the equivalent of keeping a food diary, but I also ask about lots of different tests. I look at blood pressure. I look at what they're eating, when they're eating, how they're eating, any medication they're on, supplements they're taking, general lifestyle. There's lots and lots of questions on there. Then there's a blood analysis, a dry blood analysis. So this is a finger prick test that a kit goes to your house, and there's various things we can tell from that. And then also hair analysis. So in the case of men with not much on top, there's other ways, other parts of the body that have hair that we can use. So those four key pillars that gives the information. It's the person's own information fed back to them with video consultation with me, and I can show them how their lifestyle, what they're doing, how they're behaving, what they're eating, what they're putting in and on their body, toxicity at home, lotions, potions that people use day to day aren't necessary, most of them, and I can show people how to live naturally and get a much better feel of themselves, their behaviour, career success, personal relationship success. We do stuff about emotional intelligence. So there's an awful lot of people who are frightfully clever but haven't got an ounce of common sense. So it's balance.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest barrier, Elaine, from the work that you've done with people, the biggest barrier to change? Because sometimes people do hear, or in many cases, they hear what they don't want to hear.
Yes.
And they are also people that, like you said earlier, they want the advice, but they don't want to follow it because there's some kind of perverse joy or satisfaction in doing the exact opposite of what you should be doing. So you
Mm.
should be doing it in the first place. And then someone experienced with great knowledge in the subject area confirms that and tells you that you need to stop doing that. And yet they will persist in doing that. Yeah. What would you say is the driver
Mm.
behind that?
Fear. There's only two main emotions in life: fear and love. We do things out of love. We enjoy ourselves. We're kind. There's karma. We reap what we sow. If
Yeah.
we're frightened and we're frightened of ourselves, and the world that we live in now, unfortunately, so many people are frightened
Yeah.
because we're conditioned at an early age to be frightened. We've got all these miscommunication things. So at one level, the internet's fabulous, but on the other hand, it's a dangerous place because
Yeah.
there's too many conflicting opinions and voices and messages and fakeness and goodness knows what. Don't get me started, please. But
you
it's
know,
it's fear. It's fear.
yeah, I mean, you see, that's I totally agree with you. And I never used to think that because I always thought the opposite of love was hate. Because that's the sort of thing you learn in English
Mm.
class or something like that. But when it comes to love and fear, yes, those are the two main
Mm.
emotions that are known that drive people in certain directions. What I'm really I struggle to understand is, why would someone be afraid of making a change that's going to bring something better to their lives?
So that is a really good question, and I don't think we're ever going to get the answer. We can talk for years to come. We're probably never going to get that. But I think a lot of the fear thing is not necessarily fear of failure; it's fear of success. And
Mm,
I've had that happen many times. Every time on the verge of doing something absolutely fantastic, I retreat back into myself, and I lose my bottle basically. And I think, oh, supposing this is such a good idea or such a wonderful thing that I'm doing, what happens if? So it's the fear, and so we all get the fear thing. None of us are perfect. We're all vulnerable.
yeah, yeah,
But the more we know about ourselves, the more we know how to manage ourselves, and that's the key. It's not
yeah,
what happens; it's how we respond.
yeah,
It's not who we are; it's how we manage ourselves.
yeah. Those books that you mentioned, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, is something I used to listen to on an audio book on my journeys into London. I used to have a 2 hour journey from Central Bedfordshire into London, and then 2 hour journey back every day. And the only way I could keep myself sane on packed tubes at all times of the day and night was through listening to something that I could probably get some benefit from. And there's other books like Winning Friends and Influencing People, and what's the other one? Um, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You know what? The
Yes,
ones
yeah,
where, yeah,
Kiyosaki, yeah,
that's the one, yeah.
yeah.
And some of that, I think, especially that one, in terms of how we think and what we were conditioned and how we were conditioned to think, may play a big factor in terms of why we are sometimes afraid to do something that sits outside of what we've been programmed to do. And that's is that something you've had to overcome, or is it something you've seen in people you've worked with?
It's a combination, I suppose. Really, we've all got fears and worries and so on at the end of the day. And again, I keep going back again and again. I'm sorry, like a broken record. The more you know about yourself, the more you know how to do things that serve you. If you're doing something that doesn't feel right, follow your intuition. My intuition has saved my life more than once. And if I hadn't followed my intuition, I wouldn't be sat here now talking to you, Mark.
Yeah, yeah,
So the intuition, the body feelings, our body will tell us. Our body tells us if we're frightened, if we're confident. Our mannerisms, how we hold ourselves. I've got a challenge with my posture because I've got a twisted and curved spine, and gradually I've lost 3 inches, I think, over the years in height. So we've all got challenges, we've all got things to overcome, but we don't have to sit there and be victims and wallow in pity and so on. And that's such a shame when people do that. But the fear that they've been conditioned with, um, sometimes it's just too much. So we need help. We need peer support. I'm just
yeah,
actually setting up a community interest company, another community interest company, not for profit, and we're looking at history, health, and home. And we're going to be drawing on what's happened in the past and how we can help the young people to influence the future, because the young people are our future. And unless we guide and help them, they're going to really struggle. Well, we know because of health statistics that are out there today, mental health and physical health for young people is worse than it's ever been. So if we can create a format, and I'm drawing on some really good expertise. I've got I'll be 68 in February. My two people involved in the CIC. One is 78, the other one is 80 something, and then there's other people that we're bringing in their expertise to mentor young people and help them to manage projects. So we won't be managing anything, we'll be guiding, and we'll be setting up different projects in health, history, and home, so that we can then draw from the elders and have various projects where the elders can then guide the young people, and then hopefully they can then go through and inspire others, and the world will be a happier place. Fingers crossed.
you certainly don't look your age, Elaine. Definitely not.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I was thinking I was the oldest person on the podcast. But one thing that you've mentioned about the young people are our future, and when I take myself back to those years when I was a teenager, when my mum and dad were very, very strict. My dad passed away 2 years ago, but my mum's still alive and well and still giving me a hard time. In her mind, I'm probably still that teenage boy that needs to be told off every so often. Um, what I find interesting is, the way the young people are today. They certainly, from my own point of view, I didn't have any confidence as a young person, because I grew up in a society where you were told what to do and you did it. You followed certain rules, and that was the end of it. And if you broke any rules or any conventions or the way things are done, then not only was it frowned upon, but you certainly knew about it. And it's different. I've got three daughters now, 25, 24, and one will be 18 in the next few days. So there's been a different approach there, because I saw some of the weaknesses in the way I was grown up. With the best intentions, I think those were suitable things for that time. But things have to change and adapt and evolve. And young people are a lot more confident than I was, certainly these days, in almost every aspect. And sometimes it's challenging because it creates a communication difficulty, because I'm used to kids being, or young people being, in a certain way, and they're not. But adapting to that has been something that's enabled me to grow out of some limiting mindsets. So, when it comes to what you are doing with the young people and the older generation, and bridging that gap and bringing them together so that you can get, the knowledge or experience of the old people mixed in with the confidence and the fresh outlook to things with with the young people. That's definitely going to be a game changer. Have you got any big plans for that?
Huge. We want to start in the UK. We're going to start in a couple of regions in the UK, and then we're going to expand that nationwide and then globally. I've just spoken at a conference last week here in Portugal, called the G100 Leadership Conference, and there's so many good things happening in the world. The G100 was started by an Indian lady, and her mission is, she calls it Mission Million. She wants to impact 1 million people with 100 topics in 100 countries, so on and so forth. So I'm the leader for Portugal at the moment in something called Authentic Harmony, Positive Masculinity. It's a bit of a mouthful, the title. So those 4 words: Authentic Harmony, Positive Masculinity. So it's not about gender equality. I don't agree with gender equality. We're never going to get equality. Men are stronger, women are weaker, blah, blah. We can go on forever. So we're not equal. Equal in pay parity, that type of thing, fair enough. But it's about gender balance. Again, I'm harping on about balance. Let's get the balance of female energy and male energy working in families, in businesses, in boardrooms. We have effeminate men, we have testosterone-driven women, and it's a balance that we need to harness, to harness, to keep it going. But everybody's balance will be different. Every organisation will have a different balance. So it's up to individuals to take responsibility, starting with themselves, and then inspiring whoever many they can inspire and help them change their game.
Yes, I remember standing up in a tube on the Central Line a few years ago, because a lady that was quite a lot older than me came into the tube, and I stood up for her to let her sit down. But she wasn't impressed by that.
Well, this
She
is
was
it.
she was actually quite offended, and she had a walking stick with her, and she didn't beat me with it, but she tapped my ankles with it.
Really, and this is the thing. I mean, how ridiculous is that? We're brought up to respect our elders, to look after people who are less able than we. And then when that happens, you think, oh, for goodness sake, you can't do right from wrong, can you?
Yeah, and she got even more annoyed because I, I did what I'm doing now. I just laughed, and everybody else in the tube also burst out laughing. But not out of rudeness. It's just
No.
because I was so taken aback by what happened. But yeah, it's interesting what gender equality and what it means to certain people, and not only gender equality but gender neutrality, which is another another issue. Is that something? Have you ever had to deal with people that have, or work with them, should I say, that have different views on gender, especially gender neutrality?
Yes, all the time, and it's always been around, but never been so prevalent as it is today.
Yeah,
I was in an event the other evening, and a man came in, clearly a man dressed in women's clothes with a beard, and he was such a lovely person. You know, how can you not love these people? You know, but
yeah,
it's not what I grew up with. You know, I grew up a man was a man, a woman was a woman, and now who knows what. And I think again the balance has gone wrong. You know, there's space for everybody in the world, and we need to love and respect everybody, you know, without judgment. But it's very difficult to do. We're all vulnerable in some way or another.
yeah. It's all a learning experience. I come from the same kind of upbringing where things were things were black and white. But what I've learned to do now is, I look at the person behind anything, and because I come from, you know, I come from South Africa, and from a time when things were very difficult and there was no unity between people. There was a lot of segregation and categorization of people and all this kind of thing. So there's nothing better for me than to see people of, it doesn't matter what they are, different walks of life, religions, sexual orientations, whatever you want to call it. When I look at what the person behind whatever's going on,
Mm.
that makes us all one, and it makes it a lot more of an enjoyable experience to work with people on that. So we're in the last few minutes of the podcast, Elaine, and you've it's been a fantastic conversation. Lots of different input and angles and perspectives to things. Contact details. If you give us your contact details, I'm going to put them on the screen anyway afterwards. But just tell us how people can get in touch with you.
Okay, the main website is discplus.health, DISCPLUS, discplus.health. That's the website, and from there's a tab that's got all the guest interviews on there. It's got the Friday Health Club, which is members only. That's passworded. We've got access to the hub on there as well. So the hub, the Perfect Health Hub with the free health resources, that's all available. So discplus.health. And there we are.
So is that the best way? You've got a LinkedIn profile as well, which I'll copy and put on
Yes.
here as well. Yeah. And anything else you want to let me know to put on their logos and stuff, I'll get that done for you as well. So yes, thank you very much, Elaine. It's been a long time coming. It's been a little bit of a challenge to organize the podcast. Thank you for all your patience and for bringing us the value that you brought us today. And I'll be in touch after this. To everyone listening out there, thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe. Put your comments in the boxes below. Tell us what we're doing well, what we can be doing better, and we'll make amendments where we can. So thank you very much for listening all. Have a good day. This is Mark Sauls and Elaine Godley out.
Thank you.